In this episode, we bring you the story of a community torn apart by the loss of a bright, young cheerleader. What initially appeared to be a tragic accident slowly unfolds into a story filled with hidden truths, betrayal, and a surprising love affair that led to murder and a secret pregnancy. Hanna Guildford, an 18-year-old high school senior from Kokomo, Indiana, led a life full of both successes and struggles. As a standout cheerleader at Kokomo Community High School, she was beloved by her classmates and known for her stunning performances at halftime shows. With her bright personality and impressive skills, she earned the nickname Sparkle and often found herself featured in local newspapers for her achievements in cheerleading competitions. Hanna had big dreams of going to college to study kinesiology, hoping to become a physical therapist for athletes. She lived with her parents, Randy Guildford, 38, and Katrina Guildford, 34, in a comfortable suburban home. Randy, a sales manager, had been a skilled football player in his youth, but an injury had cut short his career. Randy often pushed his own unfulfilled dreams onto Hanna, encouraging her to excel in both cheerleading and academics. Meanwhile, Katrina, who had once been actively involved in Hanna's practices, had become more distant over time. Struggling with alcoholism and feelings of insecurity, she withdrew from the family, creating a sense of tension at home. Behind her cheerful facade, Hanna was hiding a secret that consumed her thoughts. She had started a romantic relationship with her cheerleading coach, Eric Masterson, a charming and influential figure in the school's athletic program. What began as a secret romance soon turned into an affair, and things took an even more complicated turn when Hanna found out she was pregnant with his child. Caught between fear and confusion, Hanna kept her secret to herself, not telling even her closest friends, dreading the scandal that would follow if anyone found out. In the weeks before her death, her life became a whirlwind of stress and pressure. She tried to balance studying for final exams, fulfilling her cheerleading duties, and facing the overwhelming decisions about her future. Her friends began to notice a change in her. Hanna, once full of energy and always smiling, now appeared distracted and occasionally downcast. At home, the tension between her parents grew, with her father's constant pressure and her mother's ongoing struggles with drinking creating a chaotic atmosphere. In her final days, Hanna was torn between hope for her future and the overwhelming despair of her situation. Hanna often dreamed of escaping the weight of her secrets and the pressures that controlled her life, envisioning a future where she could pursue her passions and embrace the responsibilities ahead. Unfortunately, those dreams would never come true. On the morning of May 12, 2016, around 7:30 a.m., Randy Guildford went down to the basement of his family's home in Kokomo, Indiana, expecting to find his daughter Hanna getting ready for another day at school. Instead, Randy was met with a scene that would change his life forever. Hanna's lifeless body lay at the bottom of the stairs, surrounded by her cheerleading gear, ribbons, and trophies from past competitions. The basement, once a place that proudly displayed Hanna's achievements, had now become the haunting location of an unimaginable tragedy. Randy stood frozen, unable to comprehend the sight before him. The 38-year-old sales manager who had invested so much of his energy in pushing Hanna to succeed was overwhelmed by disbelief and panic. After what felt like an eternity, he rushed to her side, frantically checking for any sign of life, but it was clear she was gone. The lively daughter who had once been the center of his world now lay lifeless at his feet. Struggling to keep his composure, Randy tremblingly dialed 911. "My daughter, she's not breathing," he stammered, his voice breaking as he tried to explain what he had found. The 911 operator asked for details, but Randy could barely collect his thoughts, overwhelmed by the crushing reality that Hanna would never live to see the dreams she had worked so hard to achieve. Within minutes, Paramedics arrived and confirmed Randy's worst fears. Hanna was dead. The basement, once filled with the energy of her accomplishments, was now eerily quiet, broken only by Randy's labored breathing and the faint hum of a television left on upstairs. Meanwhile, Hanna Guildford, Hanna's mother, was still asleep in their bedroom. Groggy from a night of heavy drinking, she remained unaware of the tragedy unfolding just beneath her. It wasn't until Randy's desperate cries filled the house that she awoke, disoriented and confused. As the reality of what had happened sank in, Katrina's screams cut through the quiet morning, adding another layer of grief to the overwhelming loss that had already shattered the Guildford family. Around 8 a.m. on May 12, 2016, the Kokomo police arrived at the Guildford residence, responding to Randy's frantic 911 call. The investigation was led by Detective Brielle Mermaid Reno, an experienced officer with over 5 years on the force. Known for her sharp instincts and straightforward approach, Detective Reno was ready for the challenges of a difficult case. The sudden death of a beloved high school cheerleader like Hanna Guildford was certain to send shockwaves through the community. As Reno and her team entered the basement, the scene immediately raised several red flags. Hanna's body was found at the foot of the stairs, surrounded by her cheerleading gear, including trophies and pom-poms from competitions. While the injuries suggested she had fallen, the way her body was positioned and the absence of blood pointed to something much darker. The basement, dimly lit by the morning light streaming through small windows, was filled with framed photos and ribbons that celebrated Hanna's cheerleading achievements. Despite the initial impression of a tragic accident, Reno's trained eye noticed subtle inconsistencies. The room was cluttered, but nothing appeared out of place or disturbed, which was unusual for a fall that would be fatal. Forensic technicians began securing the area, taking photographs and gathering evidence. A large cheerleading trophy lying near Hanna's body caught Reno's attention. It had faint smudges that looked like fingerprints, and its weight made it a likely candidate for being used as a weapon. Reno immediately ordered it to be bagged and tagged for further analysis. The investigation soon expanded to the rest of the house. In the living room, the TV was still playing Good Morning America, its cheerful tones starkly out of place amid the tragedy. Hanna Guildford sat on the couch, her face pale and drawn, looking disoriented and distant. A half-empty bottle of vodka sat on the coffee table, a stark reminder of Katrina's ongoing struggle with alcohol. Randy stood nearby, visibly distraught but cooperating with the officers. Later that day, the coroner's preliminary report revealed a bombshell. The coroner's report revealed a shocking truth. Hanna was not only pregnant, but also HIV positive. This discovery added a troubling layer to the mysteries surrounding her death. Investigators began looking into her relationships, focusing on her secret affair with her cheerleading coach, Eric Masterson, a married man with considerable influence in the school district. Detective Reno's instincts told her that Hanna's death was no accident. The combination of her pregnancy, medical condition, and the unsettling details of the scene suggested a much darker story. As the investigation progressed, the truths that were revealed would shake the tight-knit community to its core. The first person Detective Brielle Mermaid Reno focused on was Coach Eric Masterson, the 46-year-old cheerleading coach at Kokomo Community High School. Known for his strong presence and ability to motivate his team, Masterson was highly respected in the community. However, beneath his well-maintained reputation, Reno suspected there were secrets he was desperately trying to conceal. At the station, Masterson sat in a dimly lit interrogation room, a sheen of sweat forming on his brow. The stark walls and the faint fume of the air conditioning made the tension in the room almost palpable. Initially, Masterson appeared cooperative, speaking highly of Hanna Guildford, describing her as one of the most talented and driven young women he had ever coached. She had such potential, he said, his voice wavering slightly. The way she commanded attention on the mat, it was like she was born for it. As Masterson spoke, Reno's questions grew more probing, carefully watching for any signs of discomfort or hesitation. Reno asked about Masterson's personal relationship with Hanna, pressing if it went beyond cheerleading practices. Masterson stiffened but denied any inappropriate contact, insisting their relationship was purely professional. Despite his words, his unease was unmistakable, evident in his shifting posture and tense expression. The turning point came when Reno slid a folder across the table toward Masterson. Inside were copies of explicit text messages and photographs exchanged between him and Hanna, messages sent just days before her death. Masterson's confident facade shattered as he stared at the damning evidence, his face going pale with realization. His face drained of color, and his hands trembled as he gripped the edges of the table. She made me hotter than a dog in heat, he stammered, his voice cracking. But I never meant for it to go this far. Reno didn't let up, pressing harder for the truth. We know Hanna was pregnant, Coach Masterson, Reno said, her voice calm but firm. The autopsy confirmed it, and the timeline points to you as the father. Masterson's jaw tightened, and his breathing became shallow as the weight of her words sank in. Before he could respond, Reno dropped another bombshell. She also tested positive for HIV, she said. Tests have confirmed that she contracted it from you. Masterson froze, his face now a mask of shock and guilt. The weight of the revelations shattered any composure Masterson had left. He buried his face in his hands, his voice barely a whisper as he muttered, "I didn't know. I swear I didn't know I was positive." His body shook with a mix of guilt and fear, his facade completely crumbling. When Reno pressed him on whether Hanna knew, Masterson shook his head vigorously. "No, she didn't," he replied, his voice strained. "I never wanted to hurt her." His words seemed desperate, but his guilt was undeniable. Despite his admissions, Masterson continued to deny any involvement in Hanna's death. He claimed he had no knowledge of her plans that morning and insisted their relationship, though inappropriate, had been consensual. However, his increasing agitation only fueled Reno's suspicion, making her more certain that there was more to the story than he was letting on. When the interrogation ended, Masterson was released, pending further investigation, but Reno made her position clear. "You're at the center of this now, Coach," she said, her gaze unflinching, "and I won't stop until I find out what happened to Hanna." Her words hung in the air, a promise of the relentless pursuit of the truth. Next, Detective Brielle Mermaid Reno shifted her focus to Randolph "Randy" Guildford, Hanna's 38-year-old father. Randy worked as a sales manager at a local auto dealership and was well known in Kokomo. Driven and ambitious, he had earned a reputation for living vicariously through Hanna's successes, often pushing her to achieve perfection in both academics and cheerleading. A former high school athlete, Randy's cheerleading career had been cut short by a back injury, leaving him with unfulfilled dreams that he projected onto Hanna. He pushed her relentlessly to excel, making sure she was the star of the team. On the morning of Hanna's death, Randy had been at work, but rushed home as soon as he received the devastating call. By the time Randy arrived, police officers were already on the scene. Witnesses described him as visibly shaken, yet strangely focused, repeatedly asking how the tragedy would affect Hanna's reputation and the family's standing in the community. His agitation seemed to overshadow his grief, raising red flags for Reno. During his interview with Reno, Randy presented himself as a grieving yet proud father, emphasizing the sacrifices he had made for Hanna's success. "She was the best," Randy said, his voice tight with emotion. "Hanna was going to go far, and I made sure she had every opportunity." Instantly fascinated, Hanna caught hold of the second Bible and began to read the parable of the poorer than himself. Randy read the book excitedly. He loved the entire process. Released and cleared. "She had the talent, the drive, everything," Randy continued, his voice laced with pride. But when Reno steered the conversation toward Hanna's personal life, particularly her relationship with Coach Masterson, his demeanor shifted. He became defensive and evasive, insisting that his role in Hanna's cheerleading career had always been strictly supportive. His discomfort was palpable, and Reno, however, had uncovered evidence to the contrary. Text messages retrieved from Randy's phone revealed a disturbing dynamic. Randy had been aware of Hanna's inappropriate relationship with Coach Masterson and in some cases had even actively facilitated it. This discovery only deepened the mystery surrounding Hanna's death and raised further questions about Randy's involvement. In one message, Randy suggested meeting times for Hanna and Masterson, even offering to cover for her at home. Another message congratulated Masterson after Hanna's stellar performance at a regional competition, with a disturbing insinuation that their relationship had helped enhance her routines. When confronted with this evidence, Randy's composure began to crack. His confident facade faltered as the reality of his actions became undeniable. At first, Randy denied knowledge of the texts, but eventually he admitted to being aware of the relationship. "I thought it was harmless," he muttered, his voice strained. "She was happy, and he cared about her success as much as I did." His words, though defensive, revealed a deeper, unsettling complicity in the situation. Reno noticed, however, that his voice wavered when he spoke, and his hands trembled slightly as he repeatedly adjusted his watch, a clear sign of nervousness. When she brought up the revelation that Hanna had been pregnant with Masterson's child and that she was HIV positive, information revealed by the autopsy, Randy's face darkened. He clenched his fists tightly, his expression hardening as he struggled to contain his emotions. "I didn't know," he said through gritted teeth. "If I had, I would have stopped it." Despite his claims of ignorance, Randy's behavior suggested otherwise. His defensive posture, the tension in his voice, and his failure to make eye contact all pointed to a deeper knowledge of the situation than he was willing to admit. Reno had a feeling that Randy's strong focus on the family's reputation, combined with his awareness of Hanna's connection with Masterson, could have pushed him to act without thinking. As the interview wrapped up, it became clear to Reno that Randy was holding back important details, and his involvement in the events leading up to Hanna's death was still a key focus of the investigation. The last person on Detective Brielle Mermaid Reno's list of suspects was Hanna Guildford, Hanna's 34-year-old mother. Katrina had once been full of life, a former cheerleader and a small-town beauty queen with a captivating presence. But by May 2016, she was a far cry from the woman she used to be, grappling with alcoholism and a sense of worthlessness. Her marriage to Randy had also grown strained and emotionally distant. While Randy poured all his attention into Hanna's cheerleading career, Katrina often felt overlooked and forgotten in her own home. Her battle with alcohol had become well known in the community. Neighbors often spotted her at the local liquor store, buying cheap wine and vodka. Katrina's drinking had gotten so bad that staying sober was the exception, not the rule. Her unpredictable behavior had driven a wedge between her and both friends and family. Her relationship with Hanna was no better. Katrina felt resentment toward the intense pressure Randy put on Hanna to excel, and she was envious of the close connection her daughter shared with her husband. On the morning of Hanna's death, Katrina was at home. She was the one who found Hanna's body in the basement and dialed 911. Her voice on the call was panicked and slurred, and when the officers arrived, they found her in a near-hysterical state, switching between fits of uncontrollable sobbing and loud, frantic screams. Her disheveled appearance and the scent of alcohol on her breath immediately raised red flags. During her interview with Detective Reno, Katrina's behavior was unpredictable, shifting from emotional outbursts to unsettling periods of silence and calm. When asked about her relationship with Hanna, Katrina's answers were inconsistent. She repeated, "Hanna was my baby," but when Detective Reno pressed her for specifics about their interactions in the days leading up to her death, her responses were vague and disjointed. However, when Reno turned the questions to Katrina's relationship with Coach Masterson, her demeanor changed drastically. Her face contorted with anger, and she erupted into a furious rant, accusing her daughter of stealing Masterson's attention. "Hanna was always the perfect little girl," Katrina spat, her voice dripping with bitterness. "But she had no right to take what was mine. That man was supposed to love me." Her words revealed a deep, almost obsessive jealousy that had clearly been building for some time. As the interview went on, Katrina's agitation intensified. When Reno softly hinted that Hanna's death might not have been an accident, Katrina snapped, shouting incoherently before suddenly breaking down into tears. Her erratic emotions made it difficult for Reno to form a clear understanding of the events. Despite Katrina's emotional outbursts, Detective Reno noticed a recurring pattern of resentment and jealousy in her words toward both her daughter and others in her life. Katrina's erratic behavior and unstable mood made her a key person of interest in the case. Reno couldn't shake the thought that her long-held grudges, combined with her declining mental health, could have played a role in the tragic outcome. As the interview concluded, Reno left with more questions than answers, but one thing was clear. Hanna Guildford's troubled past and emotional instability made her a central figure in the case. Then, on May 18, 2016, just a week after Hanna Guildford's tragic death, a shocking new twist sent ripples through the town of Kokomo. Whoa! It happened during Hanna's memorial service, held in the high school gymnasium, where hundreds of mourners had come to honor the young cheerleader's life. The mood was somber, with touching tributes and heartfelt speeches. But it was Randy Guildford's sudden outburst that left everyone in stunned silence. Clearly intoxicated and visibly shaken, Randy stood up abruptly in the middle of the service. His speech was slurred, but his words were clear. In a moment of raw emotion, Randy confessed that he knew his wife, Hanna Guildford, had killed their daughter. He revealed that he had helped Katrina stage the scene to make it appear as an accident, all in a desperate attempt to shield their family from public shame. Gasps rippled through the room as mourners tried to grasp the shocking revelation. Detective Brielle Mermaid Reno, who had been at the service to quietly observe the family's reactions, immediately understood that the case had taken a dramatic turn. In the wake of Randy's confession, officers from the Kokomo Police Department swiftly moved to detain him for further questioning. Armed with new information from Randy's confession, investigators returned to the Guildford home with a fresh sense of purpose. This time, when they re-examined the basement where Hanna's body had been found, they searched more carefully. Following the lead from Randy's confession, officers discovered traces of blood that had been poorly cleaned, along with additional shards of a broken trophy that had been missed during the initial investigation. Forensic analysis confirmed that the blood found in the basement matched Hanna's DNA. This, along with Randy's detailed confession, pieced together a chilling account of the events leading to Hanna's death. Investigators concluded that Katrina had struck Hanna with the trophy during a violent argument, and Randy, driven by fear and misplaced loyalty, had helped her stage the scene to cover up the crime. The town of Kokomo was stunned. What had first been seen as a tragic accident was now revealed to be a brutal murder, hidden by those who were meant to care for and protect Hanna. With this new discovery, the investigation took a crucial turn, leading to a dramatic arrest and a truth that would leave the community shaken for years. After Hanna Guildford's shocking confession at his daughter Hanna's memorial service, the Kokomo Police Department quickly ramped up their investigation. On May 20, 2016, just 38 hours after Randy's admission, officials named Hanna Guildford, a 34-year-old homemaker struggling with severe alcoholism, as the primary suspect in Hanna's murder. Katrina had long been known as a troubled figure in the community. Katrina's unpredictable behavior and troubled relationship with Hanna were no secret to those who knew her, but the revelation that she was involved in her daughter's death shocked many. Detective Brielle Mermaid Reno spearheaded the efforts to apprehend Katrina. The arrest took place early that morning as the team gathered outside the Guildford home. The overcast skies mirrored the heavy mood among the officers. When Katrina answered the door, she looked worn and disheveled, as though the guilt had taken a visible toll on her since the memorial. She didn't resist and quietly accepted her arrest. As the handcuffs were fastened, Katrina began to cry, not in surprise, but in resignation. It was as if she knew the truth had finally caught up with her. As she was led to the waiting police car, the normally lively neighborhood seemed unnervingly quiet. The stillness was only broken by the distant hum of morning traffic. At the station, Katrina was officially charged with the murder of her daughter, Hanna Guildford. During her first interrogation, she was visibly emotional, but, to everyone's surprise, surprisingly cooperative. Katrina gave a chilling account of what led to the murder. She described a heated argument on the night of Hanna's death, where, heavily intoxicated, she confronted her daughter in a fit of jealousy over rumors of a relationship between Hanna and Coach Masterson. Together, they staged the scene to make it look like a tragic accident. They placed Hanna's body at the bottom of the basement stairs and scattered her cheerleading gear to make it seem as though she had fallen. Randy hoped this would shield their family from scandal, but in the end, his conscience couldn't bear the weight of the lie, leading him to confess the truth. Hanna Guildford's arrest rocked the close-knit town of Kokomo. The Guildford family, once respected for their success and closeness, was now revealed to be broken and deeply troubled. The community was left grappling with anger, grief, and disbelief, unable to understand how a mother could commit such a terrible act against her own child. Hanna Guildford's trial for the murder of her daughter Hanna began in late August 2018 at the Jackson County Courthouse in Kokomo, Indiana. The case quickly became a local sensation, drawing extensive coverage from media outlets like the Southern Indiana. The courtroom was packed with spectators, many of whom had known the Guildford family for years and were searching for answers to the tragedy that had rocked their community. The prosecution, led by District Attorney Mark Uno, a seasoned attorney with a strong reputation for handling violent crime cases, argued that Katrina's actions were both intentional and premeditated. Uno painted Katrina as a woman consumed by jealousy and resentment over her daughter's close relationship with Coach Eric Masterson, a bond Katrina had secretly designed for herself. He highlighted the brutality of the crime, detailing how Katrina had struck Hanna with a cheerleading trophy and then enlisted her husband Randy to stage the scene to look like an accident. Forensic evidence and Randy's confession formed the core of the prosecution's case, leaving little room for doubt. On the defense side, attorney Lil Bone Ranch, a public defender known for her compassionate approach to difficult cases, argued that Katrina's actions were not premeditated. Instead, she framed the crime as the result of a momentary lapse in judgment, triggered by years of emotional turmoil, alcoholism, and a heated argument with her daughter. Boone Ranch portrayed Katrina as a woman crushed by her circumstances, a mother at her breaking point. She urged the jury to consider Katrina's history of mental health struggles and addiction, asking for leniency and presenting her actions as those of a deeply troubled but ultimately broken individual. Throughout the trial, Hanna's classmates, cheer teammates, and friends attended in support of the Guildford family, their sorrow clear for all to see. The jury listened closely as testimonies painted two starkly different portraits of Katrina, one as a loving mother who had lost her way, and the other as a jealous woman whose emotions had spiraled out of control. After 2 days of deliberation, the jury returned a verdict. Guilty of second-degree murder, Katrina Guildford was sentenced to 25 years in prison without the possibility of parole. The verdict provided a bittersweet sense of closure for Hanna's friends and family, but the community remained divided. Some felt that justice had been served and that Katrina's sentence was fitting for the gravity of her crime. Others, however, argued that while her actions were horrific, they stemmed from her untreated struggles, and that the sentence was too severe. For Randy Guildford, the trial marked the ultimate collapse of his family. His role in covering up the crime left him burdened with guilt as he faced the difficult reality of rebuilding his life after such a public and tragic fall from grace. In the aftermath of Katrina Guildford's trial, life in Kokomo, Indiana, was forever altered for everyone involved. Now serving a 25-year sentence at Logan Correctional Center, Katrina lived a life of isolation and regret. Once a constant at her daughter Hannah's cheerleading competitions, she now spent her days trapped in the monotony of prison life, constantly grappling with the weight of her actions.